Okay, Roberta, at 6:30.
All right, thank you. This is Roberta Jorgensen. I would like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting for June 9th, 2020 for the Planning Commission of the City of Paso Robles. Commissioner Kogler, would you lead us tonight in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the
flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one God,
one day,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all. And may we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Christensen. Commissioner Christensen. Commissioner Gibson.
Aye, here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Castillo.
Here.
Commissioner Kogler.
Here.
Commissioner Neal.
Here.
Commissioner Christensen, are you there? Commissioner Christensen, we cannot hear you. All right, Commissioner Jorgensen?
Here.
Okay, I believe Commissioner Christensen's out there, but we're going to have to confirm that he's actually still on the line. So we're going to move ahead with Christensen absent right now.
All right. And may we have staff introductions, please?
Yeah, Warren Frace, Community Development Director.
Darren Nash, City Planner.
Lori Wilson, Assistant Planner.
David Athy, City Engineer.
All right, if that is all staff that's present, are there any general public comments regarding matters not on the agenda tonight?
We do not have any callers.
All right, thank you. And do we have any agenda items proposed to be tabled or rescheduled?
There are none.
All right, thank you. Well, then let's begin with agenda item number 1, Plan Development 20-05, Pasolivo Commercial Light Industrial Building. May we have the staff report?
Good evening. Just give me just one moment and I'll share my screen. Is everybody able to see that? PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. The project before you tonight is a plan development for a new commercial building. All right, the request is to construct a 27,000 square foot, 2-story commercial industrial building. The project also includes a retention basin on the back portion of the property and an easement to benefit the neighboring parcel to the north, where Paso Truck Center currently is. And the site's highlighted in red. It's just south of Paso Truck Center and the 46 East and Golden Hill intersection. Here you'll see the overall site and landscaping plan. The building will be utilizing an existing entrance off of Golden Hill Road, which is just shown right here. There's 56 parking spaces provided along Golden Hill and the northern property line. Circulation is provided for all around the building, and the drive aisles have been designed specifically to accommodate a larger turning radius and support bulk deliveries. It is limited to a 53-foot trailer. Landscaping will be planted along Golden Hill, consists of a variety of trees, shrubs, and grasses. Oh, is that you, Ty? Not sure who joined us there, but let's see. It's also going to be adding landscaping along the pedestrian pathways here, and then throughout the parking area as well. I'll provide additional detail in another slide. This is the location, though, of the easement. and then the retention basin over here. So the building's been designed to create 6 individual units. The main pedestrian entrances are shown on the north face of the building. And then for tenants who are needing more of a warehouse use, roll-up doors, oops, go back a slide. Roll-up doors can be provided for on the southern entrance. There's also going to be a main building entrance with offices shown here that are that'll be facing Golden Hill Road. Pasolivo, they intend to occupy the back portion of the building that's shown in green. They're needing to expand their operations, and they'll be using the space for bottling, labeling, storage, and distribution. They're estimating about 8 to 10 deliveries per month. And they also do show a covered loading delivery bay in the back corner. The second floor plan has offices shown along here. Everything below is just open to the bottom floor. And then on the left over here, you have restrooms, janitorial area, and an additional office. The southern elevation on the top of the slide shows the proposed roll-up doors. On the north elevation just below, you'll have the main pedestrian entrances on the ground level, and then an additional walkway providing access to the second-story offices. That's shown right here. The west elevation, which faces Golden Hill, this is where the main lobby is located, and the applicant's architect has really focused their architectural efforts on these 2 elevations, on the north and the west. So they're proposing a variety of materials. Metal siding will be used on all elevations, and then wood siding and stone are being used on the main lobby entrance, which wraps around to the north elevation. And then I wanted to point out here too, this portion, this kind of pop-out portion of the roof, that is intended to house any sort of mechanical equipment. So the applicant would also like to put in a fence along the northern property line. So shown here in red is where the fence would be going, and it encompasses the easement that's proposed. So the point of the easement is for Paso Truck Center to be able to continue to utilize outdoor storage space that they've had here. And then should that use ever change or go away, the applicant to put in a could fence along the install additional parking there, line. So shown here. And there's an example on the top right for the fencing that they're proposing along that property line as well. So the project also requests signage. Both of these are a couple of different options that they're looking at. Both of the options are consistent with the city's sign ordinance. It would just have the name of the center and then individual spaces for the units that they'd be renting out. So this proposed project is consistent with their general plan and zoning code. It doesn't include any special requests. They meet all of the setbacks. They're also consistent with neighboring land uses, which include mini storage, vehicle equipment sales, and other just various commercial light industrial uses. So the options before the commission tonight are to adopt Resolution A, approving the construction of this building, subject to standard conditions of approval. You can amend the above listed action, refer back to staff or DRC for additional analysis, or make findings to deny it. With that, I will say that we do have Megan with Kurt Consulting on the line as the applicant's representation. We also have the architect for additional questions, but I'll go ahead and pass it back to the commission at this point. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lori. So for questions of staff, I will go through and ask individual commissioners pretty much in the order we've done recently since we're using this technology. So Commissioner Davis, do you have questions?
One question that comes to mind, and it's about the easement. So you said it's to allow the neighboring property to continue to store. Is that what you said, Lori?
Right. They have some outdoor storage in that location right now, and they want to be able to continue to allow them to do that. So the owner for Pasolivo building owns both parcels.
Both parcels. So, okay. I was just wondering if there was any need to have certain fencing so that storage wasn't visible to people in the neighborhood. But I guess the applicant could control that.
Right. And I think by the fencing that they're proposing to add, it'll be, more controlled once this project goes in, more so than it is now.
And Lori, could you point out where the fencing is around the easement, or is there fencing there?
Yes. So I don't believe there's any fencing there right now, but the proposed fence would go all the way across the property line here, where those little X's are, and then down around the easement and back over.
Okay.
And so it'd be pretty well covered with that fence, just be this little access points on each end that would be visible.
Okay, and another question that I had, I see the information on signage. Has DRC then already reviewed that part, the signage, and so now we're looking at the overall development plan, or would this come back to DRC for further review on signage?
So the signage was included as part of the review with DRC, and it's also being included as part of this development plan. So that would be an option for the commission to approve that with this. And then should they make any changes or want to add lighting or different colors, we could bring that back to the DRC.
Yeah, I'll reserve my questions about circulation. I think that dialogue happened at DRC, so perhaps it will come out further. So that's all I have at this time, Lori. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and just to make mention real quick too, I know Megan has some exhibits to provide to touch on circulation specifically.
Yeah, circulation and maybe access on and off the Golden Hill Road. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
All right, Commissioner Kogler, do you have questions of staff?
Yes, Madam Chair, along the same lines, and I would defer this until ultimately the applicant has a presentation, but I'm curious as to why is it a connection between the two properties since they're under the same ownership? The one to the north, the exit driveway, entrance driveway is getting pretty close to the intersection, and it seems like it might benefit from having an alternative to go further south. But I'll wait for comments on that later. The one thing I am curious about from the staff's review of this, there really wasn't a recommendation per se in this one. Do you feel that it meets the provision that requires extra special attention and detail for a metal building?
Yes, we do. Yes, we are recommending approval.
And that's due to the wood and some of the other materials that are used?
Yes, yeah, and I can let Shanna go into detail on all the different aspects of it, but the city does have the commercial industrial design guidelines, and we've reviewed that along with those, and it does meet those. And I'd also like to add that David Athey is here with us too. Perhaps he might want to touch on the other entrance that you mentioned and the use of that.
Okay, that's fine. That's all for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Shall we go ahead and let staff discuss the entrance to the intersection while we're on staff questions? Mr. Kogler, would that be okay with you?
Absolutely, yes.
Hi, this is David Athey. Currently, there's two existing drive approaches for these two properties. In terms of adding additional drive approaches here, would not be in favor of that. These are two separate properties, so they are entitled to access to Golden Hill Road. So in terms of the access to the property, the access provided is sufficient at this point. And so I don't know if that answers your question, or if you have a different question, I'd be happy to answer it.
Mr. Athey, as a follow-up, I wasn't talking about adding a new driveway. There are two there now, but the fence is going to separate those. And if they're under common ownership or with a cross easement, it would seem like it may be beneficial to allow some other circulation in and out of there. That was my question or comment.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, the Planning Commission could require access between the two parcels. At this point, it's not needed for either project, but that is certainly within your purview. You could ask for a reciprocal access easement provided in the future if the property changes hands.
If I
Commissioner
may,
Kogler,
yeah, if I may, Madam
ahead.
Chair, David, would that be advisable in your view to have at least some relief to that existing driveway that's further to the north with an alternative to get out of the site?
You know, I really can't say no. I mean, you know, having multiple options for the project would always be a good thing. Is it required for this project? Yeah, I don't think so. At this point, so.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Neal, do you have questions?
I just noticed on staff report that it said June 18th, 2020 for the DRC. I suspect the presence of our staff is unquestionable, but that's pretty amazing. I think it's on page, shoot, where was it?
It's page 8 of the staff report.
Yeah. Page 8 of the staff report. That's it for me.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Castillo, questions for staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In reference to, I had some of the same questions as far as signage goes along the side of lighting, but I can wait for them to discuss the lighting piece on the signage, as well as on the parking lorry. I remember you saying something about storage, but does that storage affect the parking at all? The existing storage, I guess. I wasn't clear on that. Can you say again on that piece as far as the storage goes, the outdoor storage piece?
Yes. So they have 56 parking spaces accommodated for right now, which meets the requirement. I believe it's actually 1 or 2 spaces above what we would require. It was just making a comment that should Paso Truck Center ever go away and they don't need to provide for that outdoor storage and that easement space, that it's potential for them to add additional parking in the future.
Okay, perfect. That clears up that question. And then on the north-facing elevation, on the second, is that a balcony or is it just a makeshift? It is a balcony.
Right, that's a pedestrian walkway to access the offices on the second floor.
Okay. And then is that just metal? I can't tell from the drawings.
Let's
mesh
see,
that's between almost like a hexagon mesh.
Right, it's it's a little blurry, but they're just calling it an alternative mesh railing. Looks like a hexagon material. We can have Shanna speak to that a little further.
Okay, perfect. I would appreciate that. And that's all I have for right now.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Christensen.
Yeah, I think for me, I'll wait to hear about the circulation. I'll defer to that, to hear what their presentation has to say about that. I'm kind of, I was thinking the same thing along the lines of there is another approach there. Why aren't we taking advantage of that? And I am curious, when we did discuss the materials in, I think it was DRC, if the applicant also, one of the concerns was that the materials may change as it gets actually submitted for building permits. And I know we talked about the way it looks now and that changing by the time it comes in because of cost or things like that. And I just wondered if the applicant had already addressed that as well too. Maybe they've thought of, that this is going to be something that they don't intend to really change much, or if they've got alternatives that they're thinking of now, it would really be nice to know. So I'll kind of defer to the other items, the signage and the circulation as well, once we hear more.
Okay, let's defer that to the presentation from the applicant. Is that all right? About the materials?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. If they have a chance when they come up, I would appreciate if they could talk about it.
Okay. Commissioner Gibson, questions for staff?
Just one at this time, and follow up on a little bit different vein than Commissioner Castillo. Could staff educate me as to the zoning of a C3 and the type of storage or warehouses uses that could go into that site? And I'm looking at in the context of the ingress and egress and parking on the south side of the building. So I would think that what actually goes in there would have a certain or significant impact on the ingress and egress on the south side. Could you educate me as what sort of uses would go into that C3? It says storage and warehouse, but could you go into a little more depth for me?
Sure, and Darren, you might help me out a little further too, as I don't have the zoning matrix in front of me, but it could be a variety of uses from, I mean, something as small as a CrossFit type gym to something a little bit more intense like Pasolivo is intending and doing, which includes a little bit of actual processing, labeling, bottling. They're having truck deliveries, and it can really be a wide range of uses there. I believe that what Pasolivo is describing, though, would give you an idea of what would be a little bit more of an intense use, and then all the way down to like a CrossFit gym that I mentioned, where it's, you know, they're obviously not going to have big trucks coming in. I would have to pull up the matrix to get a little bit more detailed for you, but does that help you?
Yes, thank you. That's all my questions. I would look forward to hearing from the applicants.
Okay, any other questions, Commissioner Gibson?
No, ma'am. Again, I'll wait to hear from the applicants.
Okay, thank you. I have a question about the easement. So what happens if the property to the north is sold? What happens to that easement?
Sorry, I'm trying to switch slides over there. It's not wanting to go. Okay. So if the Paso Truck Center is sold, what happens to the easement?
Yes.
Darren, would you be able to confirm that for me if that stays with the property?
Right, so the applicants are showing this easement for use of the existing building on the northerly parcel. So the conditions of approval would require that that easement be placed on the property. A lot of times a property owner can't grant itself an easement, but with this development plan, it's showing this easement area. So upon sale, there would be a requirement that this easement be recorded in order to use for use of this building. And I would let the applicant kind of explain their intent as well with the easement. And I think that it'll be good to get their thoughts on the easement and what would happen on the sale. And then, because the existing property line is there, they aren't asking for a subdivision, but I think what they're showing is with the property, with the new building, they are acknowledging that with the existing use in the northerly building, that this easement area would be used. But I think it's a good question for the applicant to explain what their plan is with the easement on the sale of the northerly property. Because theoretically, the property line's there. Those roll doors on the back of the building would not be able to be used without this easement being there. So I think that's a question to discuss with the applicant, and the Planning Commission may wish to add some conditions related to that easement.
Okay, so we'll we'll defer that one until the applicant. And then I have a question on the signage. We're shown two options. Are we being asked tonight to approve one or the other, or approve them as either or?
I think the way it is right now, it'd be approving them as either or. If there was one in particular that the commission favored, they could do so, but right now it'd be an either or, just giving them the options.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question for staff is, I'm having a really hard time understanding people. The quality of the audio is terrible. Is that at my end, or is that for everybody?
So
It sounds pretty clear in City Hall.
Is it? All right.
It might be on your end, Roberta.
Okay, well then, if I ask for people to repeat themselves, I apologize. Okay, so let's see, that was questions of staff. I will open now the public hearing. So if the applicant or the applicant's representative would like to make a presentation, this would be the time to do it.
Roberta, before we go to the applicant presentation, we didn't put on the slides the call-in number. Could you announce the call-in number real quickly? Or actually, I can do it.
Yes. Yeah, why don't you do it? Because by the time I find it, you don't want to wait.
So members of
here
the
we go. I have it.
members of the public that members of the public that would like to participate in this public hearing should call 805-865-7276. So that is members of the public wishing to participate in the public hearing must call 805-865-7276.
All right, thank you, Warren. And so the applicant's representative, if you would state your name and your company and tell us your relationship to the project. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Megan Martin. I work with Kirk Consulting, and I am the agent on behalf of Mr. Brian Dirk of Pasolivo. I'm joined this evening by Shanna Reese of Reese Design Studio, who, following my brief presentation, will be available for any questions your commission may have. And I believe, Lori, you indicated that I am presenter and I'm able to share my screen for that presentation?
Yes, you should be all set to go.
Okay. Hold on just 1 second, please.
We can see it.
Wonderful. Okay. So again, thank you again. My name is Megan Martin. Our project is located at 2346 Golden Hill Road in Paso within the commercial light industrial zoning category. The property is approximately 1.59 acres. The parcel itself is mostly vacant with some paved parking. The topography is generally level at the site at less than 2%. There's existing fencing connecting the northern parcel to the southernmost property line, as well as existing curb gutter sidewalk and ornamental landscaping and parking spaces. There is a single existing access drive off of Golden Hill Road into that existing parking lot. All existing ornamental landscaping and fencing will be removed for the proposed development. The project, as described by Lori, as well as in the staff report, is a planned development to develop a two-story, 27,000 square foot commercial light industrial building. As already described, Pasolivo will occupy approximately 4,600 square feet. That'll include warehouse storage, packaging for shipping, receiving, as well as other ancillary office uses. The Pasolivo loading bay can accommodate a 53-foot trailer. And while Lori said that there would be 8 to 10 deliveries per month, this is correct. Only 3 of those would be by the 53-foot trailer. All other deliveries would be of a smaller utility van size or delivery truck size, similar to UPS. The remaining 22,000 square feet of the building is available for individual lease. And I just wanted to mention that while on the site plan that you'll see before you this evening, it identifies uses for warehouse, storage, and office space, the applicant intends to consider leasing to any of the permitted uses that are allowed within the C3 zoning designation. These include, but are not limited to, for example, a tasting room, a florist, an antique shop, or even something similar to healthcare service. So for example, a chiropractor or a dentist. So those uses, with the approval of this plan development, would require a business license as well as potentially tenant improvements, but would not require an additional plan development or conditional use permit. And so those are kind of the uses that the applicant is and our client is seeking to establish in this area. It doesn't necessarily need to be solely held to storage, warehouse, and office. However, the project is parked for that. We're proposing 56 vehicle parking spaces. That includes ADA, motorcycle, and bicycle. We've designed a 6,600 square foot retention basin, as well as we are providing a 2,700 square foot easement for outdoor storage for the neighborhood parcel to the north. And I'll go into details on that in just a second when I bring up the general site plan. So in front of you is the site plan, and through the next series of slides, I'll be providing a quick summary of the characteristics of each, and hopefully I'm also able to provide each of you from your questions that you had this evening on an explanation as to why we're proposing the project as we are. So the first of those is going to be the proposed fencing. So as it stands right now, there's existing fencing between the northern parcel and the existing building all the way to the southern, but that will be removed and replacement fencing will be added along the northern property line, along the red dash, as you can see here. And the fencing material was provided by Lori earlier. It'll be of metal or iron with the wood slats to prevent any sort of visual for employees or visitors to this business park to the storage that would be located behind the easement. The 2,700 square foot easement is located as such to, again, as city staff has already provided, to provide additional storage space for the Tractor Supply Company located in the northern parcel. In the event that that northern parcel were to be sold, it's the intent of the applicant to convert this space, and it's been designed as such, to convert this space into permanent parking to support the proposed project and any future use of the site. So essentially the easement would be removed and these spaces would then be marked as such to reflect the existing parking spaces. And like I said, the easement's been designed as such, but for the time being, the client wanted to continue to provide that outdoor storage space to the existing use to the northern property. The proposed retention basin is located at the easternmost portion of the property, and it's designed to capture all runoff from the impervious surfaces and new structure. It'll be landscaped with ornamental grasses. Total volume of runoff leaving the site will be below pre-developed conditions. The trash enclosure will serve the entire project site. There will be a total of 4 bins located within it, and the enclosure will be designed consistent with the style and materials of the proposed building. As I mentioned earlier, there are a total of 56 parking spaces. Of those 56, 4 of those will be accessible spaces, 2 motorcycle and 2 compact. And there will also be a bicycle rack located at the front of the building, adjacent to the entrance. And then lastly, in the purple that you see denoted before you, that is the covered loading bay that will serve Pasolivo. And as mentioned, that's able to accommodate a 53-foot trailer. So again, Lori, thank you so much. You already went through the individual lease space options for the lower floor. But again, just to reiterate, these lease spaces are right now as designed for any type of storage, warehouse, or office use. However, it is anticipated that there might be an opportunity to consider leasing to any of the allowable permitted P uses that are allowed within the C3 zoning designation. And as I mentioned earlier, that could be anything from a gym to a chiropractor's office. And so the lower floor, as you see here, entrance, again, adjacent to Golden Hill Road. You'll have a lobby, an elevator to the second floor with office space on either side, as well as restrooms and stairs. The roll-up doors associated with the proposed future lease space for warehouse is going to be on the southern wall. And there would also be options for lower office space. And on the northern facing front, each office space or storage space would be able to accommodate an entrance for visitors or patrons to the business park. The second floor, as of right now, is all proposed as office space. So these are the stairs leading up. And to answer one commissioner's question on whether or not it was a balcony or not, this is a proposed breezeway. And so patrons or visitors, as well as employees, would be able to access each of these individual lease spaces by coming up the stairs and heading out through the breezeway to access that area. There are also stairs located at the northeastern side of the building where patrons or visitors could come up and again access each of those individual lease spaces. Pasolivo on the lower floor plan would occupy, again, approximately 4,600 square feet. Visitors would be able to enter through an office space. There would be a break room, conference room, restrooms, as well as room for spicing packaging, warehouse storage, cold storage, and additional loading area for the loading bay for when those 53-foot truck deliveries arrive. On the upper floor plan, there isn't it's a proposed mezzanine. And so I'm showing kind of a detail here, but it would be additional storage space that would be associated with that mezzanine on that second floor. So next to run through the elevations, and again quickly, so on the north elevation, the building at the top of the ridge would be approximately 31 feet in height. This rooftop monitor would conceal and hide any roof equipment used to support the building, for example, an HVAC system. The front of the building, as proposed and as intended, would be made of a composite wood, which looks similar to real wood, but has better performance from a maintenance standpoint. And it is the intent of our client and the applicant to move forward with the design as you see before you. They are not intending to change the materials in any way from what's being proposed. The south elevation shows the roll-up door for Pasolivo, where that 53-foot trailer would be accommodated. The south elevation shows the roll-up doors for the proposed lease option for leasing warehouse space. And this is the loading bay for Pasolivo. This is the entrance that also faces onto Golden Hill. And on the north elevation, you'll see that this is the north elevation. What we wanted to do, or what the intent was that this would be the majority of the elevation that would be seen by travelers along Golden Hill Road. So it was really designed to be aesthetically pleasing and provide that architectural character that's consistent with the commercial and industrial design guidelines, and also fit in with the surrounding project vicinity. So below you have each of those individual lease spaces for access for either employees or for patrons visiting the site, and then above is that breezeway. And the metal siding that's located here would be a steel mesh or cable, and it again would be consistent with what you're seeing here in this photo. The project would result in the disturbance of the entire project site. That's 1.59 acres. It will connect to existing sewer and water services stubbed from Golden Hill. All site work and earthwork would be minimal and associated with the preparation of the parking lot, the building foundation, and construction of the retention basin. The existing parking would be demolished, as already mentioned, to provide for 56 total parking spaces and drive aisles approximately 24 feet in width that provided 360-degree access around the proposed building. The landscaping would be planted along the property frontage and between the building entrances to provide a visual buffer for parking. The loading bay at Pasolivo would accommodate the 53-foot trailer for deliveries that would occur, again, for the 53-foot trailer up to 3 times per month, but total deliveries to Pasolivo is anticipated to be 8 to 10. Deliveries to other businesses are able to queue and park within the parking lot area and along the southern property line, and I'll show that in a supplemental exhibit following this slide. As it relates to access, the site is currently accessed by an existing driveway south of the intersection of Golden Hill Road and Highway 46. And as another commissioner mentioned, just south of an existing driveway associated with the northern property. So the existing access that would service this proposed project, it will be improved and reconstructed to meet city standards for commercial driveway apron requirements. And the client would prefer that this operate as the sole ingress and egress onto the site. And as David Affey mentioned, as proposed, the driveway meets all, would meet all current standards and would be consistent with the general plan. We had originally brought up the idea of reciprocal access, or whether or not we wanted to provide for connection between the southern and the northern parcel. However, if these were under separate ownership, or if they had already been separated by an existing fence, we didn't feel that it would be necessary, as the existing access would be able to provide would be able to provide sufficient ingress and egress to the site. The drive aisles around the building have been specifically designed to accommodate the larger turning radius to support the 53-foot trailer. All delivery vehicles would enter and travel counterclockwise. And again, sufficient area has been provided along the southern property line for deliveries to queue and allow other delivery or passenger vehicles to pass uninhibited. So this is the exhibit for circulation and queuing. And again, I want to mention that the circulation that you see before you that follows this pathway would be for delivery vehicles, and it is a turning radius consistent with the 53-foot trailer. So the 53-foot trailer would enter Golden Hill and travel along the southern property line and then back into the loading bay to provide service and distribution for goods from Pasolivo. What we've provided is that along the southern property line, we show both the utility van as well as a delivery truck dimensions to show that the 53-foot truck trailer and anything smaller would be able to pass by those vehicles, again, uninhibited. Even a passenger vehicle would be able to pass by. We also were able to identify other areas that anything that is located within the white of this circulation and queuing exhibit for any type of utility van or delivery truck, that they would be able to queue sufficiently or park sufficiently for quick deliveries to the individual services or businesses that end up moving into the building. And one of the other things that one of the commissioners brought up a couple weeks ago at DRC was to provide drive aisle examples that show that this is successful and has been demonstrated in other areas. And so Shanna Reese and her design team kind of hit the ground running, and they were able to identify several different drive aisle examples that meet the same width requirement that we're proposing at 24 feet, and also have the proposed parking as well as a mix of the roll-up doors and the individual lease space options. So this first one is located at 2101 Vanderlip Court in Paso Robles. As you can see in the background, there's a mix of individual lease space doors mixed with the warehouse roll-up door spaces. The drive aisle is approximately 24 feet in width. It has parking on either side. Service vehicles, whether it be delivery, utility, or a larger trailer vehicle, would enter the property, would queue within any of the available drive aisle space to support deliveries to those businesses. Another drive aisle example located at, this is the bottom center at 2300 Tooley Road in Paso. A little bit of a more narrow drive aisle width, less than 24 feet, but still provides the warehouse roll-up door example with the parking associated immediately adjacent to it. So again, deliveries, trailers would pull up alongside each of the parking, perpendicular parking spaces and queue to offload any deliveries to those businesses. And then the last one that we wanted to bring to your attention is the upper right. That's at 775 Fierro Lane in San Luis Obispo. This is 24-foot wide aisle. It has parking on either side. And while it doesn't have the roll-up doors, we were able to find an example, and I'm circling that at the center of the picture in the background. We were able to find an example of a trailer, a truck trailer, queuing and still allowing sufficient space for an equivalently sized truck or passenger vehicle to still pass by. A couple of things that I just wanted to make sure that I touched on before I moved on to our conclusion. I discussed the fencing along the easement and what would potentially occur if the easement, if the northern property were to be sold. So again, that fencing along the easement is going to be, in terms of materials, consistent with the materials that are used for the proposed structure. And that's that iron or metal with the intermixed wood planking to provide screening from the outdoor storage and the adjacent property to the southern property. The easement, if the northern parcel is to be sold, would be converted to the parking spaces that it has been specifically designed for. As it relates to lighting and signage, we are proposing ground-mounted exterior illumination at the base of the sign, the proposed sign. I spoke on the connection between the two. We were wanting to keep them separate as if they were under separate ownership, which was why we did not propose as a part of this project that reciprocal access to for ingress and egress. And as already discussed by City Engineer David Athey, the proposed driveway entrance for ingress and egress is sufficient and consistent with general plan requirements. The metal railing, again, that would be used as steel mesh or cable, and the proposed materials are not intended to be changed. And so with that, I believe I've touched on each of the comments that was asked, but just want to again reiterate what Lori's already provided. The proposed use is consistent with the general plan and zoning code as discussed in the staff report. We meet all the required setbacks. The proposed land use is consistent with what we found to be in the surrounding land uses, which included mini storage, vehicle sales, equipment sales, and other commercial warehouse light industrial uses. This project is really intended to accommodate the expanding Pasolivo business, but also to provide and introduce additional lease space for businesses in the city of Paso Robles. We intentionally wanted to include the 360-degree access and circulation around the proposed structure, and that would be for accommodating delivery or passenger vehicles. And the design and architectural style of the proposed structure was designed to be consistent with commercial and industrial design guidelines as adopted by the City Council. And lastly, the proposed landscaping and irrigation are consistent with the model water efficiency landscaping ordinance as adopted by California, as well as the city zoning code. And this concludes my presentation. And again, I'd like to introduce Shanna Reese of Reese Design Studio. She and I are available for any questions you may have related to the project. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Megan, thank you. That was very thorough. I appreciate it. I'm going to quickly go through the commissioners to see if you feel like your questions were answered, or if you have other questions for the applicant. Commissioner Davis?
Yes, I think it's a question for Megan. Can you hear me? Roberta, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And this is to Megan, perhaps. In that lease space, the breezeway area that connects that second floor, It's just something that maybe I missed, but I know there's ADA parking. Is there handicap accessibility to that second floor? If so, where is that?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, great question. So any visitors to the property could, again, enter on the lower floor in any of the individual lease space areas. If they needed to access the upper floor, the entrance here leads to, the entrance here leads directly to an elevator. So you would come to these doors, the elevator would take anyone needing accessible path of travel up to the second floor, the elevators here, and they would then be able to access out through the breezeway to the upstairs individual lease space areas.
Okay, thank you. And then still a little confused about the easement. So you're saying that should the northern parcel sell, yeah, thank you. That would convert to parking spaces automatically. Is there any, maybe this is a question of staff, but is there any setback issues when you convert that to parking? That northern property is pretty close to that line. So that's a question that I have.
I'll allow staff to comment on the setbacks. To my knowledge, parking is able to be within those setbacks. But should the northern property sell, to answer your question, yes, they could be converted. And as the easement is designed, it could be converted to individual parking spaces. And again, the circulation 360 degrees counterclockwise would not be inhibited by adding parking spaces into these areas. There's also the option that if they were to sell the northern parcel, if the client or property owners at that time wanted to discuss keeping the easement there to provide for additional storage space for any future use on the northern property, they could discuss that at that time. But as of right now, the intent is we provide that easement for the outdoor storage to the north in benefit of the northern parcel. And if it were to sell, then it would be converted back and as designed into parking spaces.
And at that point, the easement goes away, or?
Yes, the easement would be rescinded.
Okay, I gotcha. We always are looking and picking things apart in circulation. I just wanted to comment that I was struck immediately by the architectural style. It's very appealing, and so I don't really have any questions about that. It's more just about circulation. So I don't know if I have an opinion about the two. Is the applicant preferring one of the preferred signage options, or you just want flexibility?
Again, great question. We were providing the flexibility for the client, so there's no preference to either, but either one would benefit the property, I think.
Okay. That's all I have, Roberta, for right now. Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have questions on actually the south sides of both the existing and the proposed building. I think the existing one is more directed perhaps to Darren, and then the second one for the applicant. Darren, in your presentation, if I understood you right, and I may have been mixing pieces together, but that existing, the tractor business or whatever it is that's to the north, does it have overhead garage doors along that easement area on the south side of the wall? Are there roll-up doors in that area? I thought you had mentioned that.
Yes, I believe there are roll doors in the existing building. Those doors are currently not too far away from the property line. So if that's maybe 10, 15 feet, something like that. So that is the existing configuration. It just so happens that with the two parcels, the existing building spills over to the southerly parcel. And I think some of the confusion for staff as well, is that they're calling it an easement area, but it really isn't an easement area. It sounds to me like the applicant is proposing a lease space for the northerly existing tractor sales business to use that crosshatched area for storage. And the way I understand it is if the property sells, one or the other, that lease area would go away and that parking could be placed there for the new southerly building. That's the way I'm understanding it. So there is currently not a condition of approval that staff has placed on this project that is requiring recording an easement over a property so that it stays in perpetuity for use by the northerly building.
Okay, so call it the easement area, if you will, that has the property line bisecting about the top, maybe 20% of it, which really the whole thing is not even labeled as, shouldn't be labeled as the easement area, because anything north of that fence line would presumably be part of the existing building's property if there ever was a future sale. I guess my concern is two-pronged. One is functionally, there are overhead doors along that area that business is accessing right now, apparently, hence the need to use that property. Just by eyeballing the dimensions that are on here, it looks like it could be as little as 5 feet off the property line to the back wall of the building, so that those overhead doors would probably be rendered useless if this got sold. And then does the existing building, if there truly is a 5 or a 6 foot setback there on that south side, does that meet setbacks for the zoning district if there was a sale and a new owner for that property?
In the C3 zone, it's possible to have a 0 setback. So the setbacks may not be an issue, but it could be a situation with proximity of roll doors to property line, but that's the current existing situation. So I don't think this project is changing that at all. I think that the sale of the northerly property to whoever's going to use that building, if they don't have the area to use to the south, what's being shown as the easement area, then I think those roll doors really are not able to be used, and someone would need to probably do a tenant improvement on the building to better suit their needs. But in terms of the setbacks of the building and the situation with the roll doors, that's the current situation. They have the ability to sell this property, whether this new project happens or not.
Okay. The use of the doors and so forth is a private matter. I was just concerned about the building setback, and you've addressed that. Let me switch to the new building, the south side of that. I would like some explanation on the overhead doors and the entry doors that are along there. How are they going to be used? And specifically, the entry doors more so than the overhead doors where product is coming in and out. My concern is that if people are accessing those very frequently, those doors open immediately into a drive area. And that was not the case in any of the 3 photos you showed us. All of those were essentially protected by parking that was there. So nobody flings the door open, walks out, and there's a truck coming 2 feet away from the wall. So explain to me how that's going to be used and what safety measures are in place there if those doors, in fact, are used for ingress and egress on any frequent basis at all.
And I'll let the applicant answer that question.
That was the intent. Thank you, Darren.
This is Shanna Reese. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I am Shanna Reese with Reese Design Studio. I'm the architect for the project. We provided those doors as egress doors. We are going to need those for exiting from that portion of the building. And we provided them at every single bay space to allow that flexibility within the building on how it gets sublet out or the size of the spaces that are needed. They are in tandem with every single roll-up door so that it's a actual man door exiting. I think your point is a good point that it does open onto the drive aisle area. I think that's something that we could address a couple of ways. One would be to recess the door so that the door doesn't fly open into a vehicle that's out there or a vehicle driving by. I think that would be an option. I think that further reducing that drive aisle width to create a bollard situation or more of a setback for those doors probably would not be as advantageous as maybe recessing those doors. these doors weren't meant to be the main entrance and egress for patrons, more of a access for employees or egress because roll-up doors wouldn't qualify, and also ease of use if they didn't want to, do the whole roll-up door if they were getting small deliveries or such.
If I may follow up quickly, is there any scenario in your mind that the way this building ultimately is parsed out and the tenant lines and leasehold improvements and things are done, that these south doors would be the only entrance to a commercial space?
This is Shanna. We did not lay that out in any of our scenarios, that would be the only entrance and egress to a space.
So it would be a secondary entrance in that regard?
Yeah.
I do like the idea you just broached of some recess of that door to provide some level of protection, even if it's only, a foot or 18 inches or something. It's something not directly into a drive aisle.
Okay.
Because you're right. Normally you might find bollards, something used in that particular case, but I can certainly understand you're dealing with some minimal widths to the driveway the way it is. That's all for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Neal.
I have none.
All right. Commissioner Castillo.
I just had a quick question. I'm not sure if she covered it because I didn't catch it, but did she cover signage as far as lighting goes or illumination at all?
Yes, but would you repeat that for us, Megan?
Yeah, happy to. Megan Martin with Kirk Consulting on behalf of the client and applicant. Commissioner Castillo, that would be ground-mounted exterior illumination. So it would be in the ground looking up at the proposed signage area.
Perfect. That's the only question I had left. Thank you.
Commissioner Christensen.
Yes, thank you. For the applicant, I have a couple questions. In regards to the warehouse space on the units that are anticipated of being leased, do you foresee that those warehouse interior spaces could be expanded at any given time to satisfy a tenant that might need, say, 2,000 square feet of warehouse space instead of 1,300 square foot of warehouse space? I know that in a C3 zoning that would probably be allowed. And that kind of leads to another question that I have in regards to that. Do you foresee that anybody coming to lease those units would have, do you foresee that there be any limitation on what allowed use they would be able to have on your behalf, not necessarily by requirement of C3 zoning or what the city would allow? And the reason I'm asking that is because I understand the point about the 3 deliveries with a 53-foot truck 3 times a month. But if you have 3 new or 2 new clients that lease that space and they increase the size of their warehouse, will they be limited to not having a 53-foot long truck? And I'll let you answer that before I follow up.
So Megan Martin, Kirk Consulting, on behalf of the applicant. So I will I'll let Shanna Reese speak to the warehouse space and office space and whether if somebody wanted to come in and expand that use area. So again, before you kind of see the purple for the future lease space. So there's individual lease space options, or they have the opportunity to expand. But again, I'll let her kind of go into that. As far as limitations on what the allowed use could be, we essentially would rely on the C3 zoning to show what could go into each of these lease spaces. And as it relates to, as it relates to whether or not there would be some threshold of uses that would exceed the number of deliveries that would be allowed to come to the proposed business park. We have parked the project for what we feel is the most intense use of the site. And so based on that and that intensification of use, I don't know that we would reach that threshold. Again, we've designed the drive aisles to accommodate any number of delivery vehicles to queue and to park either within the drive aisles on the northern side or the southern side, and have also designed it to accommodate that 53-foot truck trailer. And so we don't necessarily foresee any issues there, or that there would be any limitations on thresholds. However, I would also look to staff to kind of provide some additional insight as to whether or not there is anything existing in place that we would need to consider with the city of Paso for identifying future lease options, because what we are intending for is for future businesses is just those that are allowed as permitted. So it would require only that that business license, along with whatever tenant improvements would be required to accommodate the business in each of the different spaces.
And then this is Shanna Reese with Reese Design Studio. I'll speak a little bit to the area designated as warehouse. We went back and forth with how we can actually park the different uses that were identified in the building, and landed on an area of warehouse that is, I'm going to call it the southern third of the building. And if you go to the second floor plan, those are the areas that actually have the higher ceiling height. In the areas below the green on this plan, which are that have a second story over them, they only have about a 10-foot ceiling height in those areas. And while we have indicated a lot of those as options as storage, it wouldn't be like high pile warehouse, with racks that would go north of 10 feet. So the area designated as warehouse is sort of that lower third area within the plan, in order to accommodate the office spaces above that were valuable to the applicant, as well as being able to park on site. Additionally, this is Shannon. I also wanted to mention that the covered loading area for Pasolivo, since they are the applicant, and this is really developed to accommodate their growing needs, we gave them a covered loading area, and that's why that area there is designated as the 53-foot bay or 53-foot trailer area, just that they can back it into a covered area, which would be an asset to them. Now, if these other warehouse areas with the roll-up doors did have a large delivery of some sort, there's ample space along that drive aisle for staging of a truck out of the drive aisle, so that another vehicle could pass, and then they could do forklift loading and unloading directly into their space, but not backed up to their door.
So, and thank you for that explanation. I think what I'm getting at is, I understand that you're explaining that you're going to be limited to 3 deliveries a month with a 53-foot trailer. Anyone with experience towing a trailer, my rig that I tow is probably greater than 44, 45 feet in general. And so my concern is that as you grow and you expand there and you lease out these other spaces, there will be no limit to the size of trucks that can come in and out of there. Your 53-foot truck may still be only coming in 3 times a month. And if we can go to the view with the ingress egress with the full layout where it showed the right there, that's perfect. Thank you. Circulation queuing. You've done a great job over here where your truck can get in and out, and I think that's plenty of room there. It looks great and it's wonderful. Even on the backside, I can see how that could be an area that a truck can get through. Other maybe bobtails or smaller vans could probably park there. If you have more than one 53-foot rig on site at a time, you're going to have some traffic. My real concern actually ends up being more in the pedestrian area, where general people coming in and out of the area in their vehicle, going to the rented office space or visiting, going to the business that they're trying to come to, and coming in and out on Golden Hill Road. Those 2 spots right there seem like a very big choke point. It wouldn't. I agree that some of the other models or ideas you showed seem to be okay. I'm very familiar with Vanderlip, by the way, but I guarantee getting a 53-foot trailer in there and then having any other vehicle service is a nightmare. But right there, because it's coming out on Golden Hill, that's my concern, is that there's so much traffic that's coming down Golden Hill these days, making that sweeping turn out. If there is any reason that that truck is delayed there, stopped there, traffic will be coming to stop on Golden Hill. Traffic inside the unit will be stopped. You have to swing that truck really far out wide to get in there. And there's no determination that says that that truck can't go left, I don't believe. So those are my concerns, and I'm not sure if the applicant has any ideas on how to maybe make me feel better about that.
This is Shanna Reese with Reese Design Studio. We have definitely looked seriously at this circulation, and we do recognize that we'll call it a U-turn there at the exit to be able to take a right onto Golden Hill is probably the most challenging maneuver. And it just takes up a lot of space with the tracking trailer behind the cab. So one thought we had considered as well, which wasn't all the way developed, but we thought maybe we could modify the rear trash enclosure area to allow a hammerhead, so the truck could actually back into that area and then go straight back out the drive aisle rather than looping through the parking zones. And then it would be aligned, so it wouldn't be making a U-turn, it would just be making a right-hand turn there at the exit onto Golden Hill, or a left. Yes, there's nothing limiting it taking a left either.
One of the things I was noting is that you do have lots of parking, and I know from the DRC meeting it sounded like you guys have more than enough parking. I was wondering if it wouldn't help in some way if maybe shooting down, if you took the handicap spacing and shot it down or headed it north right there, just one space over, even giving your any other car or truck that additional space, because you've got that walking path, which probably, honestly, you and I both know probably won't get used much from pedestrian traffic, but it does make that choke point greater, which then it just makes it even worse as you get out to the actual main city street of Golden Hill. So I'm just trying to make suggestion to help eliminate that type of problem, which anything backed up there is going to back up on Golden Hill. I was just down there today. I go into the Golden Hill storage unit, and with their new design, it looks nice, but I have to tell you, it's a little more troublesome getting in and out of there. So I know I held up a couple cars today when I was pulling in with my trailer. So it's that area there that I think, for me, causes the most concern, because it's not so much what it's affecting you on site, but what it's going to be affecting on the actual city street of Golden Hill Road.
So this is Shanna Reese, if we were able to perhaps show a hammerhead solution so that the truck wouldn't have to make that U-turn, I'm wondering if would that be a good solution? What I'm looking at as the curb cut there, we have a 41-foot curb cut shown right now, which is quite a bit larger than any, than like a standard 24-foot curb cut. And so we have already quite a large area there. It's an in and egress. And if we do make it wider, I would maybe ask, is that something that by moving that crosswalk up to align with the other maybe hash marked handicap space, is that something that this city engineering staff would want to see, having a more than a 41-foot curb cut driveway apron?
Maybe staff could comment on what their thoughts are with that, if they don't mind.
I think the question was directed to staff, yes.
Hi, can you repeat the question? This is David Appy, city engineer. I'm not sure which question to address at this point. Is it the hammerhead question, or is it trucks pulling out on the Golden Hill Road, or is it the U-turn?
Shanna Reese. This is Shanna Reese. How about let's talk about the actual driveway apron width. Right now we have it shown as 41 feet wide. Is that something that you would want to see wider?
Is that existing, or is that your proposed width?
Proposed.
Yeah, so that actually exceeds our standards for width of driveways, so we would not want to see that any larger. In terms of trucks pulling out on the Golden Hill Road, just like most vehicles turning right out of this driveway, they would have to wait for a gap in traffic, and then they would merge onto Golden Hill Road and continue northbound and either go right, left, or through the Golden Hill intersection. in terms of the volume of trucks, 3 trucks a month isn't going to be a significant impact at this intersection based on the traffic estimates for the component. I was just curious, I hadn't seen from the applicant, what is the delivery time for these vehicles?
This is Megan Martin with Kirk Consulting. That actually is not something that has been discussed, but my assumption is that it would be off-peak hours.
Okay, thank you. So, that's under the commission's purview. If you'd like to limit the hours of drop off and pick up to early morning or late afternoon to miss the peak, that could be conditioned. But in terms of the volume of trucks coming out, it's really an internal site circulation issue rather than a problem with circulation on Golden Hill Road. And there is a center left-hand turn lane out there, so a truck could either go left and do a two-step turn left, or they could go or a single turn left.
Okay, this is Commissioner Christensen again. Thank you, David. I still have to respectfully question the fact that someone would be waiting there by, I understand that they would be waiting there for traffic to go through. As they're sitting there, that truck is there. Anybody trying to come into that facility or trying to turn into the project would be holding up traffic on Golden Hill. Now, they're also not. They're not the applicant. My understanding is they're not limited to 3 trucks. They're just proposing that they're going to have 3 trucks, and I hope their business grows and is successful, and they have more trucks that they need. That would be great. My concern is that as that grows and that increases, and you add more tenants into the equation, on site, I agree, it does not seem to be a terrible issue. I'm thinking of the future issue right there at the exit, the ingress and egress from Golden Hill from the site. And that turn, just right there by the pedestrian walkway is to me a concern. That's going to be a problem continually, and it will only increase it'll be an increasing problem for this project as they grow and as the building fills out.
Commissioner Christensen, we're still in questions. If you had any other questions, can we come back and further talk about this during our discussion period?
So
if you have any other further questions, go ahead and ask them now.
So that's leading to my question of the applicant. Is there, can you, with the proposal of maybe a hammerhead, would that be something that you think would satisfy that portion of the problem if they can redirect and go directly back out?
This is Megan Martin with Kirk Consulting. Again, it has not been explicitly defined, but it's something that we have conceptually looked at, and Shanna can speak more to it, but I believe the answer to your question is yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is Shanna Reese. I do think it will require a little bit of a rework there at the trash enclosure just to accommodate that hammerhead to work. And it might be a 3-point turn, but if they were able to turn around and then head out and not have to make the quote unquote U-turn out at the end, it could resolve some of those issues there at the ingress egress.
Thank you. And do you guys think that an hourly restriction would be something that would make it easier for that to take to satisfy these issues that I'm bringing to light?
This is Megan Martin with Kirk Consulting. It is something that is consistently used in both City of Paso's jurisdiction as well as others for trying to eliminate concerns related to deliveries and volume capacity issues with traffic going out onto roads. So it is something that is used consistently through across different jurisdictions and could assist in alleviating your concern, yes.
Great, thank you. I think that's all my questions for right now.
All right, Commissioner Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. For the two questions for the applicant, then I would like to ask staff 2 questions as well. So Megan, during your presentation, I believe you indicated that the upstairs units on the rear would have a mezzanine storage. Is that correct?
Yes, Megan Martin, Kirk Consulting. Yes, so the exhibit before you shows the upper level of Pasolivo. So below is the lower level of Pasolivo, warehouse, cold storage, etc. The mezzanine would be located above above the cold storage and to the right of the warehouse storage space. So forklifts within, I'm going to transition to the lower floor exhibit. So forklifts within the warehouse space located here. Are you able to see that, Commissioner?
Yes, I am.
So forklifts here would be able to lift up and access the mezzanine structure here immediately above the cold storage.
So Megan, I guess my specific question is not so much what is happening with Pasolivo, but the other units. Are you indicating that that would be the same, that the other units, the upstairs, would have a mezzanine storage overlooking the units down below?
The answer to your question is no. So the upper level, and I'm now on the upper floor plan. Right. So these future lease office spaces would not be open to below unless that was an option that a tenant wanted. And so, for example, this would be solid wall floor to ceiling, but okay, they could potentially have access through stairwell. If that wasn't something that they wanted, then another option would just be that solid wall floor to ceiling, separating the warehouse space below and storage space below.
All right. So, but just so I understand, my plans don't have the color coding, which helps immensely for me anyway. Is that the southern part of the building, those would be 2-story storage units?
So yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, just trying to understand, what it is you're proposing. So I'd like to circle back around and do some follow-up on the question that a couple of my fellow commissioners posed. So in your presentation, when you gave us some pictures and you showed 3 different sites, I believe you indicated for the traffic circulation that you'd indicated examples of 24 width passageway. Is that correct?
This is Megan Martin, Kirk Consulting. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So in looking at the plans, and again, it's real fine print, but it looks like the maximum width that I could find on the rear driveway is 30 feet. Is that correct?
So correction to those plans, the maximum drive width on the southern drive aisle, as well as on the southern drive aisle, is 24 feet. So in the exhibit before you, the southern drive aisle is 24 feet. Okay. The western drive aisle is approximately 30.5 feet. And the northern drive aisle is 24 feet 9 inches.
Okay, so I was just trying to visualize this because I tend to be visual. And so I have an F-350. I went and took my measuring tape and I measured how big my F-350 truck is, which by all accounts is not that big of a truck, and especially if we're talking about delivery. My truck, my F-350 is 21 feet long. And when I open one door, because obviously if I'm going to park there to do delivery or to load or unload from one of those units, the width of my vehicle was 12 feet. So if it's only 24 feet and I need 12 feet if I park immediately up to the door, that would seem like I only have 12 feet of access for a vehicle to go by. Is my math correct?
So let me repeat your dimensions. Again, Megan Martin, Kirk Consulting, just to make sure that I have them correct. So your overall length of your vehicle with the bed up is, you said 21 feet?
Correct.
And with it down, the overall length is 24 feet?
No, I'm talking about the width. So again, so I'm just trying to contrast the examples that you gave us. So in the examples that you gave us, there was actually perpendicular parking, and then either on perpendicular parking on both sides, or perpendicular parking on one side, and then an area for ingress or egress for large vehicles of 24 feet. But you're indicating we only start off at 24 feet, and then if I wanted to park a vehicle parallel, not perpendicular, but parallel, either along the building or along the southern wall, because I'm seeing in your circulation and queuing diagram, I see them both ways, both against the wall and then against the building. The width of my vehicle is 12 feet. Okay, so I mean, my math says that I only have 12 feet to get any vehicle in, whether it's another pickup truck, or it's a large truck, or it's a UPS type truck, or bobtail, or whatever. So that just seems like I'm very tight back there. Is my math correct?
So this is Megan Martin, Kirk Consulting. Unfortunately, I do not have an answer to your question. The dimensions that you're providing, yes, it demonstrates that it would be too tight for a 12-foot wide F-350 to park perpendicular or parallel within these drive aisle spaces. But I think that my only question would be to back to city staff. This isn't a typical standard truck dimension that I'm aware of. Again, we're looking at deliveries to the site or passenger vehicles to the site that are all smaller than the templates that we've provided for analysis related to this queuing and circulation. And so I think I appreciate the question, and I think it's a good one, but I would ask city staff to please follow up, as that's not a typical standard dimension for vehicle that would typically access a parking lot of this size.
Okay, so I have two questions for staff, just for clarity and what's being proposed. So what's being proposed, my understanding is that there would be a fence they would go across the entire northern boundary of this project, which would cut off access. So in follow up with Commissioner Kogler and I believe one other commissioner, I believe that there is a median or some sort of a traffic island directly across the driveway for the northern parcel. Is that not correct?
Yes, that's correct. There's an existing driveway entrance for ingress egress to the northern parcel.
Okay, but across from that, if you put a fence in, and either staff or applicant, either way, if in other words, we're going to in essence bifurcate what exists there now by a fence. Now we're going to have an existing driveway on the northern parcel. And I believe, because I was out there taking a look at it, there, and I drive by that way all the time anyway. There's an island in the middle of Golden Hill Road. Okay, that is directly across from the driveway, right?
Correct.
So my question, I guess I'm just trying to have affirmation that I have my dimensions right. So if you put the fence in, and now the northern parcel can only be accessed by the northernmost driveway of the two driveways that exist now, the only option that people have to get into that parcel would be coming from the south headed north, and their only option for leaving that parcel would be either go straight across Highway 46 or turn right on Highway 46 and then circle around. In other words, if they wanted to leave the parcel, they would have to go all the way around over to Barney Swartz Park or go over towards the Golden Hill Shopping Center and make a U-turn and come back if they wanted to go south. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. And again, these are two completely separate parcels. Though under common ownership, they are separate. If they were under separate ownership, it could be very similar to, for example, what the mini storage has in place right now, with mini storage placed all along that northern property line. The intent of our applicant, our client, was to have the two parcels separate and operating separately, and not combined in any way. So yes, entrance to this to this northern parcel would be through ingress egress of this single driveway, and exiting as it stands now from this parcel is a right turn only, because as you mentioned, there is a median that exists there that they would not be able to bypass.
Okay, so I have one last question, and I guess this would be of staff. So the way that this was presented, I want to ask a question about the easement. So, and Darren or Warren, probably this is probably for you, but so it was presented that this is an easement, but it doesn't sound like an easement. It doesn't seem like it fits the legal definition of an easement because it's temporary. So when we started the conversation tonight, it was said at first that it was going to be on some sort of a deed, or there'd be a deed restrictions, but then later in the presentation, it seemed to be something temporary, such that if the northern parcel or the southern parcel was sold and the ownership changed, the easement would go away. So my question is that if that's the case, and this is in essence is like a temporary granting, would we need to make some sort of a motion or an amendment to the proposal when we get to that point?
So this is Darren. So these are two existing parcels. I don't think we should be calling it an easement, because you're correct. They aren't proposing to record an easement. They're proposing to create what I would see as a lease area in favor of the northerly building for use over the property line to the southerly parcel for a storage area. Megan has indicated that if the property to the north were to sell or to go to someone separate, that lease area would go away, and that area could then be used for additional parking or whatever for the southerly building, which is the parcel that area is on. So I think it should not be discussed as an easement, because I think that confuses things. And unless the owner of the property wanted to record an easement over that property at the time of sale, you're correct that there isn't a way to require that.
Okay, all right. That's the extent of my questions at this point. So I will pass it on. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you to the applicants. You had a lot of answers for us. So I do not see that there are any phone calls from the public, and so I will close the public hearing at this time. So we will go on to discussion by the commission, and I think the best way is what we have been doing. So I will start with Commissioner Davis, if you have comments for us. Commissioner Davis?
Okay, sorry. No, technology issues here. I don't have any questions at this time.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Kogler? Or, I'm sorry, Commissioner Davis, not questions, comments?
No further comments.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kogler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The drawing that was on the screen, and I have a black screen now, that was a circulation and queuing diagram, is different than the overall architectural site plan that we have in front of us. Specifically, there's 6 feet missing off that southern driveway area that Commissioner Gibson was talking about. The circulation and queuing diagram, I couldn't tell, there was some shading in an area along that southern property line. I couldn't tell if those were contours or if it was drainage or what it was. The site plan we have actually shows what appears at least to be a curb line that, going from west to east, starts off with a minimal landscape strip and then veers a bit to the south and then follows the lot line. What I just heard is it's actually 6 feet into the property where the curb line is, because there's 24 feet from the building rather than the 30 that's dimensioned on this plan. And so I think that creates even more of a concern with the door access and people coming out now into a 24-foot drive aisle instead of a 30-foot drive aisle. So I'm curious, what happened to the other 6 feet?
All right.
I have a couple of other things, Madam Chair. Do you want me to go through those and then?
Why don't you go through those and then maybe we'll bring the applicant back.
Okay, there's a discrepancy there that I think needs to be explained, because going to Commissioner Gibson's comments, it's tighter than what I thought it was when I looked at the plans. The hammerhead option that's been discussed is an interesting one. It seems as though it requires some significant changes to the site plan, though, in terms of relocation of the trash enclosure and possibly modification of the drainage area as well. The turning radius diagram that the applicant supplied that had the different tones on it, the gray tones on it for where a vehicle would actually go, showed the only way the truck fits in that area is with the cab at about a 45-degree angle to the trailer. So it's going to be really tight maneuvering in there. And so it's going to take some site plan redoing rather than simply saying, I think, that maybe we could make that change to accommodate it. The only other comment I have, I guess, is the one I started with. And again, I would thank Commissioner Gibson because he pointed out the obvious to me that I should have had in the back of my head. I have a problem rendering that existing building to the north as now having a right-in, right-out access when we have a chance, when it's under common ownership, to require a cross-driveway access easement that will preclude that from happening in the past. The other thing that does is for anybody that does want to exit either of these parcels and go north on Golden Hill to access 46, if there's a semi-blocking, as Commissioner Christensen had alluded to, at that southernmost driveway access point, that does provide a secondary means of getting in and out of there for all of the employees and all of the people accessing both of these buildings. So I think that's a very serious consideration that we need to have as a part of this, because I think functionally it makes this work better. Those are my only 3 comments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right, maybe perhaps we could ask the applicant to explain our dimensional confusion, because I have the same confusion from the building to the southern property line.
Yes, this is Shanna Reese with Reese Design Studio. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so when we had done the, when we received this exhibit back from the engineer, we asked that question as well. We're like, oh, we're not up against the property line there, which is represented on our architectural site plans. And they explained that they actually need that for an infiltration area right up against that property line. So they need 2 feet of separation and then a 4-foot infiltration. And then there's a curb and gutter along the side of the drive area. So they maintain the 24 feet drive aisle width. And then they have an infiltration area along the bottom. That did not make it onto the architectural site plan. That's the 6-foot difference.
So clear dimension is really the 24.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner Neal, comments?
No, not at this time.
All right, Commissioner Castillo?
I'm good right now, Madam Chair.
All right, Commissioner Christensen?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Can we go back to the circulation map really quick? I just want that up while I make kind of a notation. I do want to thank Commissioner Gibson for bringing up that issue, and I agree that was kind of in the back of my mind, but I don't think I ever understood until he concerned me is the I do believe that the design where it is currently for the circulation does create, it's detrimental to the safety that's going to take place on Golden Hill. Also, looking at the circulation map, another concern is the overall circulation. If that truck and trailer is there and they're delivering, maybe the applicant can kind of give us an understanding of how long that normally would take place, how long that would be in place, preventing any other access around that part of the building. And I think for me, Commissioner Kogler's points about the potential right-of-way easement for the other property, I think this is the time to really talk about that. And so I want to leave it there, and I'll let Commissioner Gibson go.
All right. Commissioner Gibson.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the comments of the commissioners and as well as the applicants and their effort to what looks like could be a beautiful project. But I do have significant concerns on the ingress and egress. I appreciate Commissioner Kogler's suggestion of having a cross driveway easement. I think that actually is a brilliant solution to what otherwise could be very problematic. I am very concerned about the south driveway on this project. I view that basically as unworkable. I started off thinking that I had 30 feet to play with, and now we're down to 24. And just again, to be very clear, I have an F-350. We're talking about a pickup truck. Okay, and I just wanted to visualize, how much it took, because I, like Commissioner Christensen, I use that truck all the time and pull a trailer all the time, pretty much weekly. So I know what I can get that in and out on. So I took my measuring tape and I measured the width of, not the length, I did the length, but also the width. And I just assumed that obviously I have to get out of the truck. So I have to be able to open a door. And the width of the truck, including my door open so I could get out, is 12 feet. It had not occurred to me until Commissioner Kogler brought it up. There's also the outward swing of the door of the building, which has got to be at least 3 feet. So you start doing the math, and 24 feet minus 12 and minus another 3 feet, we're down to 9 feet of access. And that just doesn't work. And I had not really thought about the safety aspect of it either, but people stepping immediately out of the building, if the other vehicles are parked against the far southern wall, and that means that 53-foot semi-trailer or trailer is going to come through hugging that building, and somebody stepping out of that building, that's just not a safe situation. So I'm viewing that this is tight enough that I'm viewing that southern access is unworkable. So that's the extent of my comments for now.
All right, thank you. I share some of the concern about the southern driveway. I've never heard of measuring vehicles with their doors open, so I'm not concerned about that. And I don't think that's typical or reasonable. The applicant has told us they would recess at least partially the man doors along the southern border. So I think that helps with that concern some. I didn't understand these properties, the northern property and this proposed property were under a single ownership. So I'm a little baffled about the need to separate with the fence for the vehicular access, and would be supportive of asking the applicant if they would consider taking that fence portion away and allowing both driveways to be accessible. I do think it makes a lot more sense. I think that asking the applicant to consider the hammerhead and relocating the trash enclosure might make the commission a lot more comfortable. And then perhaps working back with the applicant's civil engineer to better understand the need for the 6 feet from the property line on the very southern property line, and if that could be accommodated in another manner. If a little more creative engineering could be implemented to allow a couple more feet of usable space. So those are my comments. I think the project is very attractive. Would like to approve it, and I just hear a lot of concern from the commission about the large vehicle access. So I do think we need to address that before we can make an approval of this. That's my opinion, not speaking for the commission. So I guess I would ask commissioners, is there a motion that anyone would like to make? Even a motion with some conditions at this point, or would you like to discuss it further? I'll just open it up for general comment to the commissioners.
Madam Chair, I know there are a couple people with their hands raised that perhaps you might consider those questions. If you can see, there's 2 people raising their hands in the platform.
Okay, I guess I see one by Commissioner Neal.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. Could we, I mean, we all have day jobs, and our city engineer, Mr. Affey, probably is the best one to answer the questions on the width and the turnaround and the truck access. And maybe we could leave it up to Mr. Affey to work with the applicant to make sure that this parking lot works appropriately. And additionally, on that south side, maybe we could think of, though it does add additional expense to get the width back, is do some subterranean infiltration area there. So just a thought. That's it for me.
All right. If there's someone else with their hand up, please speak because I don't see it on my screen.
Thank you. With your permission, Chairwoman, this is Megan Martin, Kirk Consulting, representing the applicant.
All right. Yes, please.
Thank you. So I just wanted to make a couple of notes. Again, asking City Engineer David Affey and/or planning staff to contribute to this conversation as well, but just wanting to reiterate that the existing access driveway from Golden Hill would be improved to greater than the required standard at 41 feet, that the 24-foot drive aisle width with 360-degree circulation around the building is the city standard for drive aisle width, that the parking spaces also meet that city standard. And lastly, just asking the question as to whether or not that reciprocal access that the commissioners are discussing, and through the chair, respectfully, just asking city staff whether or not that would be something that could be required if it was not under common ownership. And those are my comments and my last question, and thank you.
All right, could staff answer that question?
Sure, this is Darren Nash. So the 24-foot aisle width is standard for a two-way aisle in a parking lot. What we have here, and what I hear the concern of the planning commissioners, is the conflicts that could be possible with the roll doors and the use of the roll doors for the warehouse space with that 24-foot aisle. So what we're looking at here is a development plan for a commercial and industrial building in a C3 zone, which lends itself for those types of uses. So the Planning Commission has the ability, if there's concerns over the site planning, to ask the applicant to address that. I think that the 24 feet and then there's the 6-foot drainage area, if there's a way to work that out with maybe some underground drainage or rework the drainage to have some more width, I think the more width would be better. However, I do think the Planning Commission could put site-specific conditions on this project to prevent parking on that southerly side, require that the doors be inset as the architect indicated could happen. So I think there's some things that could be done to help with this situation. And the other thing to remember is chances are that there aren't going to be in and out delivery trucks happening on all these doors all the times of the day. I think the in and out of the delivery trucks and the size of the trucks are going to differ. I think that generally you're going to see the circulation for the people coming in and out through the front parking lot, which is a standard dimension for coming in and out of the entry of the project. So this southerly portion, or kind of the back of this warehouse and industrial building, I think that's something that is kind of an on-site thing that they would need to manage to address the number of deliveries. They can take a look at the types of uses here. But I think there's definitely some ability to put some conditions on this that would help that rear area. The question about the reciprocal easement, I definitely agree with the Planning Commission that not having a fence bisecting that parking lot, allowing reciprocal access, is a better design to function between these two parcels. However, since they are separate parcels and we're not dealing with a subdivision situation, we don't have the ability to require an access easement be placed over these two properties. Furthermore, I think that we have an existing two properties that have existing curb cuts to Golden Hill Road, which is an arterial that is already functioning in a manner with the turn lane. So this particular project isn't really adding to that problem. We have a zoning that allows commercial and industrial uses. So we're just trying to figure out site planning wise how we deal with this development plan to make it work. But in terms of the trips coming in and out of the site, I think that the fact that these two entry and exits are far apart from each other are better than if we tried to put one in the middle. I think we would cause more problems with some of the turning movements and concerns that were brought up. So don't know if I answered everything there, but we're looking at a C3 zone, and we're trying to look at the development plan for this site and uses that are permitted in the C3 zone. And there's some room here for some conditions to help circulation, if that's what the Planning Commission would like to.
All right, thank you, Darren. So I was taking some notes on your comments, and some of the thoughts, just to see if I reiterate and catch them all, is no parking allowed in the southern driveway, not just along the southern property line, but in that southern driveway, that it would be designated loading and unloading only. To require insetting the man doors on the south side of the building. And perhaps, I think you implied this without saying it fully, but perhaps to require increasing the drive width on the south through consultation with staff. And then if the city does not have the authority to require the reciprocal access, then I think that's that. If that's not something we can require. Okay, commissioners, would anyone be interested in proposing a motion with some conditions attached?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Kogler. Can I ask one more question, please?
Certainly.
So this cross driveway access easement thing really reflects a situation that is happening on the ground today. And I know the applicant doesn't want to erase the fact that it's under common ownership from this discussion, but it is. I guess I would not preclude requiring that, short of the city attorney telling us that that's outside of our authority to do so. I think it's an essential piece of this that makes the whole thing work far much better if that's something that can be accomplished.
Okay.
If I may, Madam Chairman, Chairwoman, this is Commissioner Christensen. I do have a brief question for the applicant that maybe, as we discussed before about the hammerhead, would it be possible to have the trash enclosure moved up to the north corner next to that retention basin instead of there where it's at, and then potentially have a hammerhead so that if the truck did need to turn around and go out directly, that would be a possibility?
Thank you. This is Megan Martin, Kirk Consulting, and with permission of the chairwoman, I'd be happy to answer that question.
Certainly.
Thank you. Yes, we would be more than able to accommodate that hammerhead and work with the city engineer to ensure that the easement provided enough, or sorry, not easement, that the basin provided enough area to offset the total volume of runoff, as well as continue to provide the enclosure sufficient space to access the trash enclosure at the northeastern portion of the parcel.
Thank you. And I am, without that, I would have to say that I am in agreement with Commissioner Kogler. I just find that the tightness of everything seems to really go against, obviously, the way it is now. And I know that it's one owner and it's, we're limited to what we can restrict. But that's just an idea I wanted to throw out there because I think that might be a solution that might help us resolve this issue with that choke point at the front of the property. I do agree, though, that doesn't solve the problem with the future use of the northerly property. That's it for me. Thank you.
Any other comments by commissioners?
This is Commissioner Gibson, Madam Chairwoman. I have to concur with the previous two comments that, I'm hearing what everybody is saying, but we're also making a decision on a project of whether this project works and work to the benefit of the applicant as well as the city, and as attractive as I think this project is overall, I think it's actually, as presented, it actually creates some significant problems that need to be addressed. And I would strongly agree with Commissioner Kogler, and short of somebody saying that we legally cannot do this, I'm just looking at somebody down the road saying who in the world approved this. So I also have to respectfully disagree with staff and if a 24-foot width is standard, what we have working right now, short of them doing what is actually, if it's feasible, is to add at least part or all that 6 foot back. Again, I just don't see that being workable, because people can say that there are only going to be a certain number of deliveries, but as Commissioner Christensen said, I hope the best for every business, and I hope that they have more deliveries than that. And the only access for a storage unit is through the back, through the south. I mean, you're not going to drag load and unload through parking spaces from the north side of the project building. The only access is from the south. And trying to minimize the sizes of potential vehicles, or trying to minimize the number of deliveries, I think is a mistake. I think we need to plan for the businesses being successful and plan for them being busy, and make sure we have enough rooms that they have adequate ingress and egress. That's the extent of my comments. Thanks.
Okay, I'll ask again. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Chairwoman Jorgensen, I'm not ready to make a motion, but I think if we could maybe discuss the notion of the hammerhead a bit more and prohibiting parking on the southern perimeter? I know we have questions over the access point, but maybe we could have some dialogue. Do you think prohibiting parking along the southern border would work?
I'm sorry. Commissioner Davis, I couldn't understand your last sentence, except it was about parking on the southern border. Was
Yeah,
it a question?
Just wondering if we could maybe have a little bit of discussion. I like some of the ideas that I heard from Darren, maybe prohibiting parking. I know it doesn't deal with some of the access, ingress, egress issues, but internally, would prohibiting parking on that southern border and then maybe considering that hammerhead at least move us a little closer to a motion? Could that, would eliminating parking work? Is that doable? I guess is my question. I'm pondering that in my mind.
Well, I think that's for the commission to decide. I don't see why not. It's a loading and unloading and access way. I mean, it's not designated parking. It's not in the parking count. It really should not have parking. I know the circulation plan that the applicant presented, I think for the purposes of scale, showed some different kind of vehicles stopped or parked along the southern perimeter, but that is, it's not designated as parking on the application, on the site plan. So I would think that it would be a reasonable thing to do as a condition of approval to add that the southern driveway would be loading and unloading only, no parking allowed.
At least in that piece, I just want to chime in. I like the idea of the, I don't know what we called that, the recessed doorways. I heard Commissioner Kogler talk about the safety concern. Maybe we could talk about pieces of it and prohibiting parking there, maybe having staff look at the hammerhead, at least dealing with that southern part. I mean, it's a beautiful project. I just want to see if there's a way we can make this work.
Madam Chairwoman, this is Commissioner Christensen. For me, I feel that if we could come to terms with the hammerhead, it's not a perfect solution in my mind for the future growth, but I think it definitely takes me a long way to helping alleviate the traffic and flow going through the parking area and then creating that bottleneck. That way the big trucks can turn around and go directly straight back out onto Golden Hill, which I don't know that we're ever going to be satisfied with the traffic increase there. But for me, that would be ideal. I would agree with Commissioner Gibson. That is narrow at the back. I think maybe the solution would be no parking along there. So, and the recessed doors would obviously help. That would solve those to a point with me, especially if staff has the leeway to work with the applicant to make that happen.
All right, any other comments or thoughts on conditions that would make the commission comfortable with this project circulation?
This is Commissioner Gibson again. So I would still like to see the width of the southern driveway expanded as Commissioner Neal suggested, and I would like to see that as some sort of a condition. That I'm not sure what the solution is. I'm not an engineer, but if that 6 foot that's being taken away could be mitigated and re-engineered to expand that, I think that would be hugely beneficial to the project. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Kogler.
Yes.
I think we talk about, or it was mentioned that it's city standard to have 24 feet. I don't know that that's the applicable standard here. 24 feet is typically the drive aisle distance between the ends of 2 rows of parallel parking on either side, not necessarily an aisle going through or behind a building like this that's providing service access. So I'm not sure that that's an apples to apples or an apples to oranges application of a city standard. But nonetheless, I personally would not have a problem allowing the city engineer to work with the applicant to investigate some underground drainage treatment solutions in that area, address the hammerhead perhaps also to improve circulation along there, and hopefully push that closer to the 30 feet than the 24 feet that's there, because I think that's a lot more functional. My only other comment, which probably isn't a surprise to anybody tonight, is that I will not support a motion unless it includes the maintenance of the cross-access between the two parcels. Should the city attorney ultimately suggest that that's not a legal recourse, that obviously could be withdrawn. But I think based on the facts that we know tonight, creating a right-in, right-out future situation for that northerly parcel is not a responsible position that we should take. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Madam Chair, I'll take a whirl at a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Neal.
I move to adopt Resolution A, approving Plan Development 20-05, allowing for the construction of a 27,129 square foot commercial light industrial building subject to standard conditions of approval, including 3 items: working with staff on maximizing the width of the southern portion of the site, drive aisle width. 2, working with staff on adding hammerhead at southern portion of site where existing trash enclosure is. And 3, work with applicant on keeping southern access for use of northern property. That's
Do I
it.
hear a second? Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Commissioner Christensen will second that.
All right. So motion by Commissioner Neal, second by Commissioner Christensen. Discussion.
Madam Chair.
I'd just like to see if we could, I'd just like to ask for clarification in Commissioner Kogler's. Would that include the parking restrictions in the southern border, working with staff?
Yes, no parking on the southern portion of the site.
Oh, that's right. It was your motion. It would include the prohibiting of parking on the southern.
Yes, thank you for that clarification, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
So the motion maker accepts that. Are you suggesting a modification? Is that, I'm sorry, I'm having some real audio problems, so I apologize if I'm asking for repeating, but did Commissioner Davis, did you ask for a modification to the motion?
I asked for clarification, and I think the motion maker acknowledged that it included prohibiting parking. And just in case you can't see it, Chairwoman Jorgensen, I think Commissioner Kogler was raising his hand. I'm just watching the chat room here for you.
All right, Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you, and thank you for watching the hand being raised. I also would like some clarification on that last part of Commissioner Neal's motion. I'm curious about the strength of that recommendation to maintain that connection point for the access out either of the driveways onto Golden Hill Road. How was that worded in the motion?
So it's staff's understanding that the direction is that the access between the south and north driveway must be maintained. You didn't specify a mechanism, so staff will work with the applicant to ensure that those 2 driveways are connected.
Thank you, Warren. I'm comfortable with that.
And just a little more clarification, this is Darren. I think what we'd be doing is adding a new Exhibit A to the resolution, which would be site-specific project conditions. And then these 3 conditions, or 4, however many it takes to get the southern access. The southern access would include trying to work with the drainage to try and widen to prevent or eliminate parking. And then I'm not sure if the recessed doors was also part of that, but I believe that was included as well.
I'll accept those clarifications.
Madam Chairwoman, this is David Athy, City Engineer. May I speak?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I just want to let the commissioners know that since the properties are owned by both or by one person or one entity, they currently cannot give themselves an easement between the properties in favor of one or the other. So I just want to let you know that any kind of agreement at this point would be more of a condition to have it open, and then a deed notification that if either of the properties sold, then they would have to do some type of easement to one or the other, reciprocal easement. So per the Subdivision Map Act, you cannot give yourself an easement. So I just want to let you know that.
All right. Would you think that our wording would need to indicate, I'm asking whoever on staff would like to answer, would the motion then be better worded in that respect, indicating that some kind of deed requirement, or is that beyond the commission's reach to indicate how to achieve that driveway opening?
So right now your motion is just to maintain the access. You didn't specify the mechanism, which I think is appropriate. And then staff will work on what the best mechanism is based on the city engineer's comments.
Okay. All right. All right. Any further discussion by commissioners? All right. Hearing none, I will ask for the vote.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
I'm voting now.
Aye.
Commissioner Castillo.
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That was a good long discussion, but I think we've made some quality decisions for the project, and best of luck and success to the applicant on this endeavor. All right. Let's see. We are on to discussion items. Are there any tonight, staff?
There's no additional discussion items tonight.
All right, and the consent calendar. We have meeting minutes from DRC and from the Planning Commission. Is there a motion to approve?
As Commissioner Gibson, I move to approve the DRC and Planning Commission minutes.
I'll second that.
All right, moved by Commissioner Gibson, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any discussion? All right, may we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Castillo.
Aye.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Aye.
Motion
All right,
passes 7-0.
All right, thank you very much. All right, other reports from staff.
Yes, real quick. Housing Constraints and Advisory Committee did meet within the last month. They've given direction on the housing element update. We're working on the admin draft of the housing element right now. We're working toward getting that submitted to HCD for review this summer, and we expect that a joint session between the Planning Commission and City Council will be scheduled early summer as well. Specific Plan Ad Hoc Committee, there have been no meetings on that. The Beechwood Specific Plan, we are working on that currently. We do expect that to be ready for Planning Commission by the end of July. So right now that's tentatively scheduled for July 28th.
All right. Thank you. Planning Commissioner comments. Commissioner Davis.
I have none. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Kogler.
None as well. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Neal.
None.
Commissioner Castillo. I'll take that as none. Commissioner Christensen
None at this time, thank you.
and Commissioner Gibson.
I have no comments. Thank you.
All right, and I do not either. So staff comments, please.
Yeah, just update upcoming items for the commission. There's an 8-plex on Park Street that we're getting ready for a future agenda. The variance for the Market Walk that the Planning Commission approved has been appealed to the City Council. We are looking to schedule that for a council appeal hearing. I mentioned that we are working toward a housing element joint session. The Gateway annexation project that the Planning Commission recommended to for the council to approve at your last meeting is scheduled for the next council meeting, which is next Tuesday, June 26th. So you're welcome to listen in on that item. And then in terms of just the city status with the COVID-19 issue, we are working on a citywide reopening plan. We're going to slowly start moving into reopening some, or not reopening, but moving staff back in for some office occupancy. We'll continue remote working at the same time. In terms of opening up to the public as well as having public meetings again, there isn't a timeline established for that currently. We're still waiting for direction from the state of California as well as San Luis Obispo County on the appropriate timing. It is possible that some of those things start to change in July and August. So as that becomes more clear, we'll keep the Planning Commission advised of that. But for the foreseeable future right now, we will continue with this meeting format. And that'll conclude my comments. Darren, did you have anything? Darren has nothing. That concludes staff's comments.
All right, thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved, Madam Chairman.
All right, moved by Davis, second by
I'll second Kogler.
Ogler. All right, all in favor? I'm going to just take a voice vote.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Good job, Roberta.
Good night, guys.
Everybody.
Good night.